Okay, being 6:35 on March 5th, 2020. The planning board hearing agenda as prepared. The appointments are 6:30, 319 Montpasset Street for review of site plan for the Santander Bank ATM. 6:45, 241 Franklin Street consolidation plan. Continued correspondence from town attorney and CS Energy. 7 p.m. Amy Quessel from KP Law to be in attendance to discuss the bylaw, as well as the zoning Board of Appeals decision made on February 20th, 2020, and additional comments as they come up. Discussion meetings regarding open meeting law complaint, comprehensive permit for Country Club Estates, review and approval of meeting minutes, and general correspondence. Do we have a motion to proceed with the agenda as read?
Motion to accept the agenda as read.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll second.
All the best. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
6:30 p.m. 319 Montpasset Street. Is anybody here on that project? The Santander Bank ATM?
I'm here.
Okay. Is there anything you'd like to say as it relates to this matter at this point?
Well, with the ATM, the canopy is a cleaner look. They had the big buildings before, so I'm here to answer any technical questions you may have or concerns about the new design for the.
Yeah, do you have any plans to show what's proposed? I don't know that we have anything in front of us. If you have any.
Yes, I do. Did you? Yeah, there was a package sent with all the
Okay.
plans in it, but I do have whatever you
folder
need here.
for it should be right in front of Mark,
Okay.
like closer to the edge of the desk.
Thanks, Lana.
And there's also correspondence from the fire chief. Is that in Gordon's packet, or do we know where that is?
That should be in the mail folder.
This is a copy of the
Okay.
Thank you.
So basically, this is the before. Typically, that's what all the remote drive-up slabs look like.
Okay.
And their new branding is to simplify it, because the ATM machines now don't need to have the big buildings with the air conditioners and the heaters in them, and with all the cables and everything. So we're proposing take that down and put the canopy up, and it has a protection for the snow, and it has lights for security reasons, and it does have a nice look. I brought a picture of one that was recently done in Weymouth, and we did one in Wayland as well, and it seems to be a nice cleaner look, not as bulky, and it's not as inhibited with the big buildings. You can't really see all around the sizes. Here you can see all the way through, and it's a little more, I guess, safer when you're driving up to a remote parking lot at night, going to tap Max still. But go to the ATM machine. This is a cleaner look, more safe and open.
Okay.
So that's what we're proposing. That's why we're here. I know there was already a approval on this lot for the building. So basically,
So you're not actually changing the footprint or that apron?
no.
Okay. So
No.
as far as the cars accessing it, that remains all the same? It's just on top of the island?
What happens with the installation of this? Once that building comes down, we clean the slab off.
Okay.
The cables, then the wiring are already there, because the ATM machine is already there. And actually, they have a little more because they have air conditioners and everything else in there. So there's a lot of cables that are coming out in there. So there's nothing else that's got to be dug in there or added to it.
Okay.
We basically are hooking up to what is existing. It doesn't take any more power.
Kinda like changing
The
all
canopy
the
is a low voltage. It's not, it's LEDs, so it's energy efficient, and it's like plugging in a toaster basically. So it doesn't interfere with that. And how they install this is the Hilti method, and I included this in the package. You should have that I'd sent over. They basically, this is all engineered.
Yep.
And they basically drill the holes into
A special permit that they issued.
And then the process being that if we were to decide that it was not substantially different than the previous application, then they would not be allowed to act on it
For 2 years.
for 2 years. But regardless, the zoning board determined that they didn't make a determination, but they didn't get to the point of considering that part of the application because they viewed modification.
into the slab,
The mail, it would be in that package.
17 inches deep, and then they put in the embedment compound concrete in there with the rod.
Okay.
They let it sit for an hour and a half, 2 hours, the rod, and then it's like fuses to the rest of the slab, and instead of digging a hole down and core drilling, none of that's done.
Do you have a height bar or anything going across the entrance at that location just to check for height so people don't take out the canopy above or anything like that?
Oh,
that you're adding?
it's 10 foot.
But you have like another bar or structure that you're adding? or-
We're gonna add vinyl on there. We're adding vinyl to these canopies because some of the townships didn't want to drill, so we removed the clearance bar that we originally had in our application for here.
Okay.
If they, in a year from now, decide to go with the bar, then we'll apply again and come back to the board. But right now, they're going to put white vinyl up on the canopy. It says 10 foot, so they know.
Oh, instead
Just
of,
like-
instead of a bar? Or
Instead of
they-
that bar that they were going to originally, we originally proposed to do a new footing and have the white bar come up
Yep.
in front of it.
Okay.
And the bank has decided to keep it clean and simple, like a drive-through.
Okay.
You know, you have the drive-through, 10-foot clearance. Just put it on the top in reflective white, so they
Yeah,
see it when they
also
pull
at
up.
10 feet, which is higher than a lot of the times when you do see those low clearance
Yep.
markers.
It was too
Yeah.
much. It, like, when you drive up, you have the clearance bar, then you have the
Yeah.
ATM, so,
Okay.
okay.
Okay. So is there, I don't know that there's anything necessarily that we need to formally take action on here. Is there an actual application in front of us?
Okay, we
Actually,
do,
see
yeah,
what-
we do have a decision.
The box I sent them in, do they have these
Um,
on file? Because I had the boxes there.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And those that have the company's name on it.
Yeah, we should have it.
Yeah, I know somebody was out.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But I can send, if they are mixed, I can just send another package and tell me how many you need and I can send it over.
Alana,
If
you
there's
probably
One
have
for
it,
the
huh?
It's fine.
record, please. Just one for, to make sure
I
that we
can
have
give you
one on the
mine.
record. If you don't mind.
That's fine.
Just to make sure, we may have it and it may just,
Like I said
These are them right here.
to Amy, the boxes,
It's right here.
Okay, so we have one package.
All right, ready?
yeah, I think she said 10, how many, 10 copies? There was a few.
Thank you so
But this, what I just showed you is what is in there. It's the application, it's the before and after shots, it's the detail of the Hilti and rod install. And I do have engineered sealed drawings for the final permit application.
Oh, so it's one for each of us, is that?
I was told that after, if the board, when the board
Yep.
approves, then I go back in and I do the construction permit with the sealed drawings, correct?
Yep, so I believe the
Electrical?
building inspector will want to sign structural drawings that have all the foundation details and all that information on it.
Okay.
What is the application that's in?
Do you have everything
we
you
have,
need?
I have the packet here.
If you need, you can email me, and if you need another copy, I can send them in.
Thank you.
So this is the site plan review checklist.
Building inspectors outside the hallway.
Okay.
I don't think so at this point. Once we drill the holes in there, yeah.
Same thing there.
Okay.
Yeah, so here we have the review checklist
It's a site
and the
plan,
decision form.
but it's a site plan waiver. I don't really know what that is. What are we doing a waiver for? Waiver request, no. Oh, okay, so the request and a waiver for the actual completion of a real site plan. Does anybody have any heartache over preparing a complete site plan if they're just replacing the ATM in its current location?
Well, I think that we probably had a site plan back in the day when it originally was sent out,
We
right?
did. I think that's one of the exhibits here. There's a photocopy of the
There's
previous
a
plan.
partial of that site plan. I came up
I think it's in
to, a
here.
few weeks ago, I was here and I made copies.
Yeah, so this drawing here, I think it's the previous site plan. Looks like the circulation works. Yep, that
This is
one.
it.
I think that's the original one. I'm okay with that. Anybody have any qualms about that?
I do not.
Then there's also waivers about identification of the soil, trees, vegetation, owners of, what's that?
Probably not digging, so, or changing anything besides what's on that slab, right? So they're
Yep.
you're removing the current ATM and then just putting on a new one with wires, except for those posts that you
Yes.
said,
This-
okay.
We're not removing or altering the slab at all.
Okay, waivers of contours, I don't think, you're not changing the grading there, so I don't think that's an issue. Hydrant services, we got fire department sign off, they said it was okay. Yeah, just some requirements on what should be included on the plans. Locations of driveways, entrances, I've never seen any issues at the site there with circulation and traffic. You guys seen anything?
I've never seen anything there either.
Okay. Okay. Any additional discussion on this?
Anybody?
Anybody from the audience have anything they'd like to say about the application for site plan review for the Santander Bank ATM? Okay, hearing none. Would anybody like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the site plan for Santander Bank at 319 Monpont Street.
Do we have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very
Good
much.
luck.
Have a good evening.
Okay, next on the agenda, 6:45, we have 241 Franklin Street, consolidation plan, as it relates to the solar farm project for CS Energy. Is there anybody on behalf of the applicant who would like to speak?
Yes. Timothy Boda, registered land surveyor at Conoco Engineers and Land Surveyors. And I prepared a consolidation plan. And did you have questions about it specifically, or?
I think our question was what action, if any, was being asked of us as the planning board on this project, or on this particular matter?
None that I know of. It's not a division of land, it's simply a combining of two lots.
Okay.
So it's an approval not required, I mean, it's a 81X or no new lines plan.
Yep.
It's been recorded, the deed has been recorded, that combines the two lots into one. I believe that, as far as I know, our engineering department sent the deed, the plans, everything out to the planning board, the building department, and zoning,
Yep.
if I'm not mistaken. So I came because I thought maybe there were some questions.
I think there are. The biggest question is what, if anything, we were being provided the plans for. Was it in support of some additional action, or is there something else being proposed on the site, or is it just for our information, for our record?
Must be just for your record. Now, I'm not in the engineering department. As far as I know, the proposed improvements on the site, the solar farm, that's not my bailiwick, but
Okay.
that's been going on for several months, and I think they were just waiting for the final go-ahead or sign-off from the building department, was my understanding.
Okay.
I didn't think it involved the planning board, but like I say, I'm the land surveyor on the project, not the engineer.
Do you know what the purpose of the lot consolidation plan was? What that was trying to achieve?
Would you like me to elaborate a little bit for the board?
Yeah.
So what happened originally is there was one parcel of land that came before your board that was subdivided to an A&R, was turned into two parcels. One was for the solar, and then they had another Form A out front. When it was originally presented, there was an easement that wasn't shown on the plan of the subdivision.
An existing easement?
An easement that was put on. Okay, so Long story short, it was 2 lots and 2 separate ownership. So they couldn't travel over the front lot to get to the rear lot where the solar panels were. So the consolidation is to put it back into 1 lot so they can access over their property to get to the solar panels.
So they were under 2 separate ownership to
They
begin
were
with?
under
Did the
2
solar
separate
farm buy
ownerships.
both?
Excuse me?
And the solar CS Energy bought both parcels? So now
No,
they don't-
originally they bought 1,
Okay.
and then the other one out front was under a different ownership.
And subsequently, they purchased that one and now own both, and they're
They needed
consolidating.
to purchase that one in order to get access on, I guess I'll call it
The larger
the
parcel.
westerly end or the
Yeah.
larger frontage end. Because the other end is all wetlands, they can't access it without doing a major replication.
Right.
So instead of going over somebody else's property via easement, they needed to consolidate into 1 ownership so they could access their own property and get to the solar panels.
Okay. And I know there was a discussion at one point about trying to build a residential home on that property in the front.
Correct, that was the issue. They needed to access via that easement, which would have gone through that single-family home's property, not their own property. So they bought the property, they consolidated it into 1, now they're accessing through their property for the solar panels.
And there's no plan to build
If
a
there's,
house on that lot.
if for some reason that lot, as it stands, gets deeded out, they will be in violation if they do that and try to build a home.
Okay. And I think that was our understanding at the beginning, that if they didn't have the frontage, the project wouldn't have met the zoning requirements.
Right, because it was under 2 separate ownership.
Right.
So they can't build a house on it and then keep it in the same ownership? Do you know what I'm trying to say, like where they were gonna have one?
They would have to deed it out again, and deeding it out to a separate ownership would create a violation.
So even within their own ownership, do they have the allowance to build a house there?
And, no, they'd have to present it, and they'd have to, they would have to access the commercial property through the easement.
So probably
And
not then.
they'd have to get a variance to access through 1 lot to another. So, and eventually, if the house ever got sold out, it would be creating a violation, so.
Okay, so probably no.
No.
Okay.
So that was the whole purpose of the consolidation.
Okay. That makes sense.
I think that the only thing that we were asking, or one of the things we were asking questions about is that on the plan, there seemed to still look like a lot line was between where the solar farm is and the Form A was. It sort of looked like there was, isn't that what we were having? a little
I think
bit
that
of?
and the verbiage on the purpose of the plan.
Right, the plan purpose addresses that. We've got,
Yeah,
the purpose of the plan is to show 2 lots, 82-1, the big lot, and 93-9A, the little lot. And so to show those 2 lots, I have to show the line, because otherwise people wouldn't know, well, where's the one lot, where's the other? But the purpose is to depict those 2 lots to be consolidated into 1 lot under common ownership of Green Apple Farms 4 LLC. So this is the 1 lot, this is the 2nd lot. This is the area of this is the area of that. This, in bold, is the combined area. And this deed reference is the current deed which consolidates both the lots.
is there an opposition of taking that line off?
Well, I
You need
think
to
it
know what the 2
would,
existing lots are that existed prior to the consolidation.
it actually is a lighter line than the more bold. And if someone were to look at the deed calls out, the deed starts out by saying, 1 single lot of land situated in Halifax. Then it describes by bearing and distance all the way around. It starts here, with the 70 feet,
Yeah,
and it goes all the way around
Okay.
the perimeter. No mention of that. That's just,
okay.
and then at the end, after it describes it, it reiterates, meaning and intending to convey 1 undivided lot into unified ownership. So it's pretty
Okay.
specific.
I think that was just my question though, right?
Yeah, I believe those were the questions, and part of it arose because when we had first approved it, we had never thought that we were gonna see someone try to propose a house lot.
Right.
And then a house lot came.
Yeah.
And I think that led to our hesitation on it,
Right.
just to make sure that we were clear
Yeah,
on
that's-
that. I think that's what led to a lot of the confusion.
I agree.
That's kind of what I thought, but again, not
Yeah.
having been involved
Yeah.
in the, I wasn't sure.
So we just wanted to all be clear on that, and I think it is on the plan, now that we know the intent and whatnot.
Okay.
So one more question as it relates to mixed uses on property. Could you even have a home and a solar farm on a singular piece of property, or is that not allowed by the zoning?
Well, you can have solar panels with approval of the board on your property. If it's a ground-mounted solar array, through approval of the board, you can do that under our bylaws.
So in a theoretical world, somebody could build a house on that, but then you'd have to sell it all as one property down the road, solar panels and home all.
Yeah, you can't, you're right, you couldn't have somebody owning the separate property accessing through the front property.
It has to be one property, but theoretically, there could be a possibility that somebody might down the road propose it, should they
If
want
they
to.
own both, there's a possibility, I suppose.
Okay. But then you're hamstrung by having it be that kind of a property, which would be harder to
And
sell.
that's-
elsewhere.
That's not- that's really
recreating
not
the
a-
access.
yeah,
It's not feasible.
It's really not a residential use that ties to the home.
Correct.
That would be the difference.
Is it as an accessory use, is that allowed?
Well, again, it's the solar arrays are strange because they do get some zoning exemption.
Okay.
And technically it is basically a business that's on a residential property in the fact that the company owns it. But they do get some zoning exemptions for the solar.
Okay.
I know we have Amy here tonight, Land Use Council. That's a question you could certainly pose to her if you want.
And I don't think that there's a proposal in front of us today for that, so I don't know that we need to.
And again,
get
we
into
can't,
that
we're
too
not
much
here,
tonight.
I'm not here, I don't know if you guys are here to discuss, possible future violations.
Nope, yep, no, we're just thinking down the road. Okay. Anybody from the audience tonight have any questions?
Michael DeVon, 229 Franklin, so we're right up front of the project there. With all the different variations that have gone on, does the board actually know what the proposal actually is? Because I know there was some stormwater retention basins that were actually on that front piece of property that went away, so this house lot was actually there during some part of the process. So I didn't know if we could actually see the plan that was approved by planning.
I don't have the file here. Would it be possible to take that file out?
For 241 Franklin,
Yeah.
it's not, isn't it right there?
Do we have one here?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Is that the plan right there?
So not being the engineer on the project, you're probably not gonna know exactly, right?
I wouldn't be able to answer that.
That's the survey plan. That's the same one that we've been looking at. That's, all these ones that say 2048 is the same plan.
Yeah, and I think they're all the same property.
Is this all associated just with the recent submission as opposed to the full?
Am I right in the concern is that it turns into a house lot?
Yes, yeah. This is,
All right, so that I think is our concern too. That's why we held off on this, and I think that we've come to the conclusion that we're okay on this, and that is not the intent of the plan, and that is not the proposal. So I think that was everyone's concern, that it becomes a house lot, and that is not what we're doing here tonight. If that helps.
yeah, no, I understand. I just, we sat through the planning and there was no house lot. And then when we went to zoning for this variance that they were looking for, there was a house lot. So that, at some point, that stormwater basin, was removed from the plan.
Do you know that?
I do.
Was it shown on a plan
We
or?
actually sat in conservation and they said that it was engineered out.
So do you
And conservation had a question saying, how
so
do we know it was
the
engineered
question
out?
is there supposed to be one being built that is not being built?
Correct.
Okay.
So what we're gonna base any sort of certificate of compliance on a completed construction is gonna be the site plans that were reviewed and approved. Conservation Commission should be doing the same thing. So if they're not building what was reviewed and approved, then they're going to have to demonstrate that, one, it's either not necessary to come back, get any sort of modified approval or from us or from Conservation, and demonstrate that it's not needed at that point.
And I'll just add one more thing too, based on what you said. What was approved was the plan, and the plan that was approved didn't show an easement on it at that point. That would have been required for you to approve that plan showing the easement.
Right.
And it wasn't done at that point, so.
Right, and apart from property lines and those issues, you know, the actual constructions, the improvements that were approved have to get built in accordance with those plans. So if there's anything that changes, we haven't been made aware and we would need to be made aware, otherwise they're not gonna get their approvals from the building department to open up and operate.
Okay.
So you had a question though, that stormwater management, like there was some management that was on the property and it's not anymore, is that?
It was on the original plan that was submitted and approved, and then as we went through the process to go before zoning and then conservation, it wasn't there. So we just question on how did that happen where the, you know.
Complete guess.
Yeah.
My theory would be if there is one proposed there, maybe they did hold off to see if they could get the house lot, which we all know that they can't get, and maybe now it gets constructed. It's reasonable, but I'm kind of just pulling that out of nowhere.
Do you know anything about the stormwater management
No.
issues?
I know that there was some talk about there was a basin and there wasn't, or there was and there was, but I don't know any of the details.
How much of the
They did make a change somewhere along the line.
How much of this has been built, if any at all, so far at this point?
Nothing's been built yet.
The roads
It's-
cleared
it's,
out?
They cut down trees, that's all, so.
Okay,
Yeah, the land's been cleared.
okay. Mr. Andrews?
Rob, if they go to build or pull have they pulled the permit for the ground mounted system?
Yeah, they have a permit for the solar array.
So the site plan that they gave to you is the one that, to answer his question, is the site plan that they gave to you to show that they got it approved?
I'm basing it on the consolidation of the lots.
How about the improvements themselves? Is
Like
that something that you review?
As far, what are we talking about as far
Like
as
stormwater plan, right? They submit
They
a
had
plan for
a, they had a
construction.
drainage system set up, so when you go in on the easement to the left, they had a drainage section set up.
But the
to the
drainage,
left.
I think, would be under their purview.
We don't get the construction plan, so.
No, but the board would have seen where they had the drainage
I remember.
system
seeing
set up on the
it.
site plan. I'm just asking if you had a copy of that site plan and reviewed to make sure, like, at what point do you
I-
make sure that the site plan matches? Like, is it at the end when you give the sign off, or is it before they start the building of the solar?
That's kind of like a crazy question, but I don't think that really helps them, if you know what I mean, right?
No,
There should be a check in place somewhere along the way just to make sure.
you mean like what, are you asking when he gave a permit, did the site plan get checked? So the one that was given for the permit, did the site plan that was approved get checked in the file? Is that what you're meaning?
Against the file, yeah.
They submit a site plan that goes into the file with the permit application.
Yeah, and I think that the question is, did you check it with the one that was in the planning file for to see if it matched?
I've seen the planning file, yeah, so it should match.
But have we checked it? I guess, is that part of the QC process or the review of the permit application?
Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Do they
yeah,
get
just to make
cross-checked
sure.
against the approved conservation plan and the planning board plan?
Well, the planning board plan that's approved should come to me.
It should.
It should have the signatures on it.
And next, we're just asking the question of the construction documents that get submitted to you for building permit. Do
They
those
would
get
be the
checked
signed-
against what got approved from the planning board?
The plan itself,
It would be the signed
it
plan,
would be a
right?
signed plan.
Well, they actually
I don't know.
submit the planning board plan, because a lot of times they will take that permit plan, update it, improve it, change it for construction documents, and then at that point submit that for your review and approval. Or do they typically just submit the one that?
I
has
think
the
they
planning
have
board
to submit
signatures?
an approved plan, right? Isn't that
They would submit the approved plan, that's what it is.
how it works?
So if they came in tomorrow,
Yeah.
or when you're open, and looked at the file in your office, they'd be able to see with the site plan, whether or not it shows the drainage system or not.
It should be on there if that's the approved plan. If that's what you guys approved, that's what should be submitted.
Would it be, could you go and grab it from the office so that we can take care of this all tonight?
Well, you have the plan in front of you with the signatures on it.
We don't.
No, they don't, that's the question. What they have is the survey plan that shows the two lots consolidated. They don't have the site plan that they signed off on.
Our regular secretary is out right now, so I think we just don't have all the files in front of us.
Okay, but it should be in your files, correct?
Someplace. I don't even know where they are.
Would it be awful to go get it? So
I
it's
can go
right
look
there?
for it. I don't know. I mean, it's an open file. I have to find it wherever Terry has it.
Okay,
So,
because I think,
is it a
I think
concern?
you want,
What's the
yes.
concern?
He wants
We
to
also
see
put some
it.
screening on there that, again, this is, the concern is it's been going on for so long. I mean, this
Right,
is 2,
and
3,
they,
4
and they have,
years.
they, under the building permit, they have submittal documents that can be submitted after the fact.
Right.
They have a bridge being put over a brook.
Yep.
They don't have the bridge designed yet, they don't have the retaining walls designed yet. All those submittal documents come after the
Right,
fact.
okay.
As far
Do
as
you wanna
my,
see the
as far as the building end of it.
Would it be a problem if we grab the plan?
No, I can see if I can find it.
All right, that would, yeah, thank you.
Which says like, yeah, you can build the proposal and for the building inspector thing.
My line of questioning is because a lot of times you'll take the approved plans, you'll update them, add detail, add construction information that still maintains the original design. You're just adding more information and detail for the construction. So you're not gonna be submitting a stamped planning board approved plans.
Right.
But you should be submitting a design that matches what was previously approved.
Agreed, and you probably should compare it to make sure, right?
Typically, but it sounds like he would expect to see the actual planning board approved plan, which just sounds like most people wouldn't be submitting that plan,
Okay.
based on my experience.
The reason why I asked this is because I went to the zoning board meeting where this came up, and they asked the question at the zoning board meeting, what's the approved site plan? Because the version that they were looking at showed the drainage system, but the plan that was presented to zoning was the one for the house lot. So I think they have a valid question to ask, what is actually the plan that you guys have a record?
Where is our file? Could we check our files to see where this stuff
That's
is?
the only one that I saw over there. I don't know.
For this address?
It probably is in one of the filing cabinets. which
So on
I
this
don't-
one, just so you understand, like, we don't
Oh,
usually do
yeah,
the file
no,
thing. I
yeah.
I couldn't tell you
Yeah.
which room the file cabinet was in.
Are these the file cabinets right here?
Most of them are conservation, but planning might be on the, all the way to the left. The first one on the left, like facing forward,
That one probably
This
way
one?
over.
possibly. I don't even know.
It says
But some of
241.
the files are also in this closet behind me.
Okay.
Yeah, that's confusing.
Yep.
I'd like to see the permit, see what the permit is approved for so far. It doesn't make sense to go back multiple times for one permit. And you,
Yeah, so I don't know how many of those special
right,
things
it's
have to get
confusing.
through the building department. I'm just not that familiar with it.
I don't even know who would know that. I guess Rob. Charlie, maybe. Carlos. So they have a permit to do something.
We gave them a permit, conservation gave them a permit. Sounds like building department issued a
Okay.
permit to allow them to start doing work. The question
is
is
it
whether
only
or
a
not the plans all
Partial
match up.
permit.
Well, all right, so maybe that's it. Maybe it's specific to this project with, they were allowed to go so far
So
with
far, so
what
they'll have to go
information they
back for
have.
more permits for the bridges and all the stuff he
Don't.
says they don't have yet.
I don't know about permits. I think maybe it's a individual approval. Maybe he has to grant for the various
Right.
components.
It just seems weird to do a permit for something we don't have all, like he doesn't have all the information on, no?
Yeah, and I think a
Is
lot
there
of
any
times you
point that
release
could
certain
change?
aspects of the construction to begin, like you can start clearing as they
Yeah.
put together the structural drawings for the bridge and whatever.
And then he has
have
to
you.
go back and check that and go to the next thing,
Yep.
like a house.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
So they have permission to build everything they need. They just need to submit information demonstrating that it's structurally sound and engineers designed it and all that.
fire.
If you want, we can make a note. I'd hate to drag you back here again, but that's something I could definitely offer you, is that we
No,
can
yeah,
have the thing pulled out and then we can check and see what was approved.
Yeah,
It's another trip.
We negotiated some screening, you just wanna make sure all that makes it onto the plan and we'll come this far, so. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just pass over it and then go back, so that we're
Yeah.
not holding up
Do
everyone.
you want to do that? We'll just put it on hold for now? Okay.
Yeah, if you can do that, that's perfect, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep, yeah, all right, I'll do with that.
Well, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, 7 o'clock appointment, Amy Quessel with KP Law to discuss the bylaw. Like,
Thanks,
take it
Amy.
from there.
How are you guys?
Good, how are you?
I wanted to discuss 16722. I've asked questions about it in the past, and I believe at a zoning board meeting, it was brought up by you, actually, in the beginning, I forget the date, the beginning of January, I believe it
Yeah,
was.
I think my memo was dated January 10th. Yes.
Somewhere in that.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. I'm not sure what we're discussing here. I didn't know that we were discussing.
16722, it's a bylaw, and
So, what, yeah. So
Yeah, but no, what I'm
what are we
asking
talking
is
about?
why do we already have the attorney here? Like, what's the question? Do we have, as a board, have a question?
I asked a question because it's 16722 and the unanimous decision of the planning board.
You asked a question to who? Us?
Amy.
So, Ms. Troop called me last, maybe Thursday, and asked for me to come into the planning board to address her concerns.
Do you, all right. Do you see where it's weird? Because the board hasn't thought of this, discussed it, or have anything. This sounds more like you had a personal question that you called an attorney about. I don't see this an issue where the planning board had a question and called the attorney. So is this like you personal? Like you are hiring the attorney?
I have a planning board question about 16722 and how it pertains to a unanimous.
So you didn't propose it to the planning board, you proposed, you
She
asked the attorney.
permission from the town to come.
So I cannot do it. I can't, agree to show up or anything without permission from the town. And then the chairman would have to put it on the.
So it's really
She
strange
received it.
for a member, right? I'm just getting that, it's really weird because like whatever your question is, might be something that we all know the answer to. And just as far as literally the cost that's now incurred to the town and the board, we might be able to answer your question. Why didn't you ask us?
Because I
before
won't
you spent
use
the town's money?
I asked for permission, Charlie granted the permission.
What happened was Amy Troop contacted Amy Quessel contacted me. I said yes, because we've given, policy from the board, it's been for at least 10 years, is for our land use departments and boards and commissions. They want assistance from land use, they have, as long as they tell me they're doing it, yes, it's okay.
But isn't it typically the board? Like, don't we?
I'm a member, I can call and ask a question and.
But usually when we have a question for the attorney, we all get together and we make sure it's a good question, and then we figure out what our follow-up questions are, because it's an efficient way to handle with an attorney. This is how you spend money. You don't just call up with one question and then do that.
But we
Usually
haven't
figure
heard
out.
Amy's question yet.
That's what I'm saying.
So let's hear what she has to say.
And I think Mark's point is typically we would discuss whether or not it makes sense to engage the attorney to
What if
answer
we
a
don't
question.
agree with it?
Well,
What
we
if-
don't have
what
to
if
agree
her-
with her
but if-
question, she just needs her question answered, right?
But if her question is her legal advice that she's seeking, she should be doing
But she
that
said
on
it
her
has
own, or
something
ask
to do with
us.
the planning board.
But don't you understand that this is costing the town hundreds of dollars? We could have sent her an email. Whatever question we ask her, she may now have to go back and
But
research
do
and
I
get back to
understand that
us.
we tried to do
Mark.
that and go through Charlie and
Yeah.
Charlie agreed to have her here?
I don't
So it
know.
sounds like
I
there
can
was
agree that
another-
did not happen.
I can't
did not-
send
I
an
can agree
email.
that we
I can't
did
send an
not sit
email to
down
the
and have
board to
talk about
ask
this.
for it because I won't use email because we've all sent emails back and forth to each other in groups. But yet, Charlie put an ethics violation on me. I will not use the email ever.
So why didn't we discuss this here
And-
first?
Let's hear what Charlie has to say.
I'm gonna take things into separate pieces, I'm sorry. Amy mentioned I filed an ethics complaint against her. I did not. It was an open meeting law complaint, not
yes.
ethics, okay? Under the open meeting law, if someone wanted to send a note to the board and say, I'd like to put this topic on the agenda, that is fine. The AG's office says that's perfectly fine. To put, if you need to, when are we gonna meet? Where are we gonna meet? What's gonna be on the agenda? All those, fine. Getting into deliberation about the topics on the agenda, on the other hand, is a no-no. You can't do that, but you can say, either whether it's a communication from one member to a chair or one member to everybody, hi, I'd like to put subject X on the agenda. And then probably what would happen under normal circumstances is whether it went to the secretary or whether it went to the chair, one of them would say, fine, it's on the agenda, we're doing it. Either you have a specific time or you don't have a specific time, but it's on the agenda. What we ran into, this is similar in some ways to the situation we ran into last 2 months ago now with the ZBA, in that I knew there was going to be a question that was going to come up. I asked Amy Questle to provide an answer to the ZBA. That didn't turn out to be sufficient, and so we waited another month. She had to come in, and we moved that along. In this case, it's been a week,
Yes.
almost. So, and Amy Questle knew the topics of discussion. So she was able to go back and look both at our bylaw and the general law. She's also obviously, because this topic had come up before, was familiar with the relationship of the bylaw and the general law with the ZBA case that Amy Troop cited. So I do think she's going to be as prepared as she can be in these circumstances. And so the idea is to move this situation along. I mean, obviously, I understand what you're saying, Mark.
Yeah, when you have a legal question, usually like you Google it, you don't just call an attorney.
Well,
It's an expensive thing to do without a thing, and as far as I'm concerned, this is still a personal
She
question,
brought
that's not
up
a
the
board
topic
question.
at the zoning board
That
and.
you had a question with, not the board.
No.
Do you see the difference?
No, see, that it was something that is in here, 16722 was waived.
Your question is a personal question, as far as I'm concerned. You
It's
called an
not,
attorney with a
I'm
personal
an elected
question.
official that works for the town and I'm asking it for the town of Halifax.
You don't speak for the board. None of us do.
But
Okay,
I'm-
I think we've established that there's a difference opinion on the process.
That we shouldn't do this every time. This is
We
costing money.
shouldn't do this every time. I think we should
Never
deliberate
again.
whether or not it makes sense. We should talk amongst ourselves first before we engage an attorney to come and speak at the hearing. I think it makes sense to ask for maybe some sort of correspondence or questions that we have. If there's question on things that were approved, we should talk about them first, I think, to Mark's point. And then we should consider collectively engaging an attorney if we need to. That being said, we're here. I don't think we need to beat the dead horse on how we got here necessarily at this point. I would think that in the future we want to deliberate first, and as a group we want to make decisions and ask for things to happen. But here we are. So, what's the specific question?
So 16722 talks about, it says, no proposed change in this chapter which has been unfavorably acted upon by the town meeting shall be considered on its merits by town meeting within 2 years after the date of such unfavorable action unless adoption of the proposed change is recommended in the final report of the planning board. No appeal or petition for a variance under 16720A3 and no application for a special permit under 16721A2, which has been unfavorably acted upon by the Board of Appeals, shall be considered on its merits by said board within 2 years after the vote of such unfavorable action, except with the unanimous consent of the planning board. So, I believe that you told me on the phone last week that you had told the zoning board about this and that you didn't believe that they could vote based on this. Is that correct?
So, yes, that is correct. So, but just backing up a little bit, like Charlie had said, there was a question that was anticipated with the Zoning Board of Appeals. So the background on this is that the Zoning Board of Appeals went to modify their existing special permit, their special permit that was not appealed. So they went to modify that special permit, and they received a vote of 3 in favor and 2 opposed. Therefore, they did not get the supermajority that they needed. They needed 4 votes. And so, in that instance, in my opinion, then what happened was, just sticking with the facts as I know them, then what happened, they came to this board, to the planning board, for a modification to their site plan approval, and they were granted. So that modification of the site plan approval, they took that plan, that same plan, and then they filed a new modification with the Zoning Board of Appeals for that modification. So planning board site plan would match their special permit, is what I'm assuming is what their intent was. And so when that new appeal or new petition for a modification was filed, it's my opinion that 40A Section 16, which is the repetitive petition statute, which somewhat tracks the language of your bylaw. Your bylaw is more stringent. Under 40A Section 16, you only need under 40A Section 16, there's a opportunity for the zoning board to determine if it's not more substantial, and the planning board only needs to have a 4 out of 5 supermajority. All but 1 is the actual statute. So your zoning bylaw is a little bit more stringent, but so then I drafted a letter dated January 10th to the Zoning Board of Appeals, where I explained my reasoning. I explained my opinion that 40A Section 16 and Section 22 of the bylaw do apply in this instance.
And do you have the letter?
Yes, I do. It's marked up, if you don't mind. No, it's just got just the one area. No,
And in layman terms, what you were saying was that the application should not be considered because it was
repetitive,
unfavorably acted upon.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And so the Zoning Board of Appeals, they opened up the hearing because there was an application filed, so they opened up the hearing because you don't want to risk a constructive approval. They opened up the hearing, and one of the things that I will say, which I did say at the first hearing, was that in this area of repetitive filings, 40A Section 16, there's not a lot of case law. And the case law that's out there is not clear, and the case law that's out there does not apply to the situation that we're in. So, I didn't have a lot of guidance. So what I did was I took it from, which is what we always do when we don't have guidance, we take it from a practical standpoint, which is that to modify a special permit, you have to file a new application, you have to notify the abutters, you have to publish. So essentially, it's almost like you're filing a new special permit. And so, in my opinion, Section 16 and Section 22 of your bylaw would apply to a modification of a special permit. The applicant's attorney at the February 20th hearing presented an alternative argument, which was that 40A Section 14, which is the statute that gives the zoning board their powers, 40A Section 14 specifically states in the second paragraph that the Zoning Board of Appeal has the power to modify or amend special permits. And so the Zoning Board of Appeals felt that because they have the power to do that, they could do that on their own without triggering 40A Section 16 or Section 22 of your bylaw. So the one thing I do disagree with with you, Ms. Troop, on is I don't think that they actually waived section 16. In essence, they did, but they basically just took a step saying it doesn't apply in this instance. I mean, I think we're probably splitting hairs whether it's waiving or not.
No formal action to waive.
There was no formal action. Essentially, what they held was we don't even get to that step. So at the zoning board hearing on February 20th, I did advise them that they would first have to make a decision to go forward or not. So I advised them that if they thought that they had this power under section 14, or if they thought that it had to go back for a repetitive petition, that should be the first step. The next step would be that they would vote on the actual request, which was the request to modify the special permit. And they did do that, and the vote was that they felt that they had the power to amend a special permit under section 14. My opinion is my opinion, it's in writing. I can tell you that there's no case law regarding this in section 14 about amending special permits or modifying special permits. There's nothing. I checked again today just to be super prepared, and there's really nothing. So it essentially, came down to the zoning board determining what their powers were.
So the key point, it sounds like, being that it's a modification of a previously approved
Yes.
plan. The plan was approved. The denial of a modification is not perceived as a denial of a site plan application.
Correct.
Plus, you could modify infinite times
Correct.
without triggering that threshold.
Correct.
Okay.
And the applicant's attorney also pointed out that in section 16 states that no filing for a special permit or application for a special permit may be accepted within 2 years. So his argument, and I don't want to speak for him because he's here, but his argument was essentially that that doesn't say anything about a modification or anything like that. But conversely, my argument is that when you go to modify a special permit, you actually have to file an application. You have to advertise it in the newspaper. You have to notify. So
there's coverage there. And
Yeah.
notification.
So essentially, it should have come back to planning board before it went to zoning when they modified the plan.
It did.
It did come back.
well, it did come back to the
But we
planning
didn't get
board.
the votes.
Nope,
No,
the
it
planning
wasn't.
board voted in favor of the change.
So they had to go to zoning board after planning board. So they went to planning board first, which was approved 2 to 1.
2 to 1.
2 to 1, and then they went back to zoning board because they had to make the plans align. So they had to get the modified plan approved by zoning.
So what kind of the root of it is normally they can't go to zoning board, get denied, come back to us, then go back to zoning again, except for in a modification, they're free to do as many modifications and get denied and come back and try again.
So the whole thing, the whole impetus behind the repetitive petition statute, and which your bylaw clearly appears to be based off of, is that someone comes in for a variance, they get denied. All they have to do is file their filing fee, file a new application. They come in again. They come in again. They come in again. It basically stops these repetitive petitions. And so under section 16. If you get denied, you go back to the drawing board. If you redo your project, you then have the opportunity to go back to the Zoning Board of Appeals, provided your changes are substantial, your modifications are substantial, and so.
Well, I guess it depends what they modify then, right?
Right,
Yeah.
but in this instance, we didn't get to that step. We did not get to that step. The Zoning Board of Appeals determined that the repetitive petition and section 22 does not apply to a modification of a special permit.
Do we have paperwork on that, on the meeting of what they approved? The zoning board?
I think I had
The
asked
decision
for it.
letter is in the mail folder.
And then subsequently, they approved the application to
Yes.
modify.
Yes, I think they definitely got a supermajority, and I don't recall, they might have gotten, it might have been unanimous, I don't.
It was 4-1.
4-1, sorry. So they received the supermajority they needed.
Okay.
I think it's only, there's probably only one copy in that folder. So in your opinion, theoretically, somebody could come in with a really simple plan, get that plan approved, and come back and try and modify it as many times as they wanted to?
Not my opinion.
Oh, yeah, but that was the zoning board.
So when we sat in that bylaw meeting with you a couple weeks back, you had the opinion that it should stop with us not zoning, right? That the final, am I remembering this right?
Well, for the new bylaw, yeah.
Because there has to be like a checks and balance of it all. But the
That's
people-
not applicable to this
Yeah.
necessarily, because this is all based on the current
Right.
bylaw.
It's just confusing.
So it was you representing the town of Halifax opinion that our bylaw should have stood.
That,
16722.
Section 16 and Section 48, Section 16, the state statute, and your bylaw 16722 would have applied to a modification of a special permit.
So, I feel as though that it's an injustice to the town of Halifax residents, and that the town of Halifax has these bylaws here. They haven't voted to change that bylaw, and our attorney also states that 16722 applies. So, I don't think that we should ignore that.
I think we've tried to change the zoning bylaw multiple times to no avail. Happy to do it again. It's just a function of how you do it.
Right, and here we are now though, where,
So what are our options? Amy, what are our options if we feel like that was against us?
Your options, in my opinion, your options are limited because the zoning board of appeals didn't say section 22 and section 16 don't apply. What they said was under section 14 we can do this. So the options are limited. Like I said,
Because in your feeling, they did something that was in their right to do? Is that?
you know what,
That's-
actually, Mr. Melius, it doesn't really, my opinion doesn't matter. They did something that, in their opinion, they had the right to do. So, and again, my position is my position.
Yeah.
But again, there is no case law, and I explained this to the zoning board. If I had a case where this fit within the four corners of that case, I would be throwing that case everywhere. I'd be waving it around.
Just
You know,
nothing to compare it to.
yeah. It just, I've said this before, I feel like every time I come in, I never have an answer for you guys because these,
Oh, we come up with good
the
ones.
circumstances and your bylaw, but, it's the situation that we're in. And so as I explained to the zoning board of appeals, I took everything I had in front of me and I took some case law that I had and, I took the statute and that's what my opinion came out to be, that it applies.
so I don't understand how we can ignore certain laws in our bylaws. I just don't understand how they
Can
can
we
be
see that if
ignored.
that's their decision?
Yeah, I was just finishing reading
Okay.
it while asking the question.
Do it.
There should be a copy in the mail folder. I put it
we
in there
didn't see it.
yesterday. Sorry, here's
Don't
the
worry,
last
hon.
page.
You're doing a good job. Oh, that's the last page.
Endless management. Maybe we should try to grab it.
Oh, maybe that's it.
I just think that it's a dangerous slope to go down to ignore certain bylaws when our town doesn't agree that we can do that. meaning like the residents that are not here tonight that we represent. These laws are not simply they're supposed to be followed. So if our attorney is telling the zoning and us that, if I am understanding you correctly, you believe 16722 applied. And so we're opening up again our town to more lawsuits. So that is why I called her in, because I find it to be not right.
I agree we should follow the bylaw. I think this action was already taken. I'm not sure that there's much for us to do as a board necessarily. I think the residents, if they're unhappy with how their elected officials are voting, have the opportunity to vote them out and vote new people in. I don't know that there's much recourse necessarily that we should be taken as a board.
Well, I just think that we have to follow the bylaws and.
Well, what are our actions if, I mean, I'm new to this, so sorry that I'm asking questions.
No, please do.
But like, what are the actions now if we feel like that was not favorably, like they went against us? I mean, there has to be some kind of checks and balances, otherwise, let's say, I'm not saying they would, but zoning could change anything we decide, right? Whether we agree or not, they can change it?
They can modify our decision, but they can vote in a different way on the application that's in front of them. We don't have a say on applications in front of the zoning board, just like they don't get a vote on applications in front of the planning board. We act
But
independently.
they have the final say.
No, it's two independent approvals. The applicant can't do what they want to do unless we approve it and zoning board approves it. So both parties need to approve it.
So what I understand is that zoning shouldn't have gotten this back because they did not have a unanimous consent of the planning board to get it back.
And that's the attorney's position. Well, I don't know if it has anything to do with our vote necessarily. I think it's just the provision that's in the bylaw that
So how did
says
it
that
get
they
back
shouldn't
to
reconsider
zoning
it.
without coming back? When they
Because
changed it?
because the zoning board of appeals felt that a modification doesn't apply because of section 48, section 14, because of the powers listed in the statute, that they have the power to modify a special permit.
That was not the original intent of that bylaw.
And the
It was
reason
not to stop.
And the reason maybe the confusion is that the application that was in front of us was never unfavorably acted upon. So that provision wouldn't have ever come into play on the application that we voted on. Because the zoning board actually turned down the modification once, that was the reason why Attorney Questle felt that it should not have been reconsidered.
Right. So what can we do from here? If we feel like that it shouldn't have happened this way?
Unfortunately,
Can we
like I
appeal
said,
it?
Anyone can file an appeal. There's case law out there that says that a planning board doesn't necessarily have standing. So there's the Town of Pembroke versus Town of Marshfield case, which says that a town board does not, because so in the under 40A, you have to have standing, you have to prove an individualized harm. And so it's almost impossible for a board to to claim an individualized harm.
But if there were groups of people that disagreed with it, they could,
Definitely.
on a private individual basis.
Definitely.
But we didn't have a unanimous vote and town attorney didn't agree with it going over and zoning board did it anyways?
I may be mistaken, but I think if you have an issue, I think you can personally, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you could appeal it.
I'm just
I'm just-
curious how it, I guess, got to that point. Where
So it got to that point. They never addressed that point. Is what I'm trying to make clear is that it's my opinion, and honestly, I don't think that they told me I was wrong or ignored me or anything. They essentially just never got to that step. They basically determined that under 14 they could modify a special permit, and that doesn't make it applicable to Section 16 and Section 22. So they didn't say it's applicable to Section 22 and we're going to ignore it. They essentially said it's not applicable.
So I guess what was, I mean, I kind of want to know what was modified, but, right?
So they went to the zoning board of appeals with a plan that essentially showed lots, and then they
That was the one
came.
that was approved.
No, and then they that was denied, 3-2 vote, so they didn't get the super majority. But then they came here with a slightly different plan, and that showed the 4 lots with the frontage, each lot having frontage on that internal drive, and they took that exact plan back to zoning.
And I think the question is, how did that plan differ from what was originally approved, triggering the need for a modification?
Oh, it was the original approval had no lot lines, and this plan has lot lines. And I think the configuration of the buildings shifted a little bit to get these lots.
I thought the site plan in 2014 did have lot lines.
The special permit did not.
No, it had lot lines.
It had, what was it, but it was the dotted lines.
No, there's no
Oh,
dotted
okay.
lines.
It was straight up dotted.
So it went from 6 lots, it went from 6 lots to 4 lots. That's the
Now
difference.
4 lots meet all the requirements
On the
frontage.
internal drive. Do we have that definition in town yet? The internal drive?
So the zoning board made the determination that the modified plan met the regulations, and was there waivers granted or anything along those lines? Or was it purely just a site plan review?
A special
Or
permit.
a
They
special
modified the special permit.
So no variances or anything, just
No.
a approval of a special permit?
So if we don't have internal drives, how do they not need a variance for it?
So, again, that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with 40A, Section 16 or 22. That goes to the actual merits of the zoning board's decision. That, again, in my opinion, is a result of the very confusing bylaw that we're working off of for multifamily.
Yeah, I don't find it confusing, but okay. But the 16722, you advised zoning that did apply, and they didn't vote against it. They just sort of found a way of 160. Held on 160. Did you say 14?
40A, Section 14.
Okay, thank you. 40A, Section 14. But that's still not in our bylaw. It might be the state bylaw, but our bylaw supersedes that.
No.
Overrules it.
The statute would overrule a bylaw unless there's language in the bylaw, specific language that makes it more stringent. And we don't have that under Section 14. I mean, I guess, you know what, I'd have to look because you do have powers in here, so, 21.
Amy, question. Our bylaw does mention 48, correct? The zone?
Yes.
The first to 48?
Yep. And the Board of Appeals, under Section 16721, it's the power of the Board of Appeals. And they have the power to issue a special permit. So there's nothing in here regarding whether they can modify it or how they modify it. So then we would go over to the statute.
So you're in 16721, is that where you are?
Yes, 21, yes.
So in 167-21 too, special permits to hear and decide an application for a special permit for an exception as provided by sections of this chapter. Such permit shall be applicable only to use of the property for the purpose specified and shall not waive, vary, or relax any other provision of this chapter applicable thereto. Such permit may be issued when the Board of Appeals has found that the use involved will not be detrimental to the established or future character of the neighborhood or the town, and that the internal circulation and utility systems of proposed use have been certified by Planning Board to achieve the intent of subdivision rules of the town of Halifax, as applied by the planning board and exercising its jurisdiction over roads and utilities and subdivisions under the Massachusetts subdivision control law and specially permitted uses under this zoning chapter. To ensure conformance to these certified plans, construction shall be inspected by the board's engineer under the direction of the board, with fees paid by the developer as specified in 235-35. Basically, again, stating a lot more to do with the planning board and site plan review under 167-28. And that no other bylaws can be relaxed.
Unless they find it's not more detrimentally, not more detrimental to the area. That's the standard for a special permit.
So how is it not detrimental if we do not have a defined internal road? How is it not detrimental to the people of Halifax that there is now an internal road that's not in our different definitions?
That would be up to the board that made that decision, not me.
So the future of this town could be in that now that'll set precedent where we'll have to allow certain things based on this in the future. Isn't that basically the understanding of all?
The future is always set by past precedent.
So, one thing that I will say is that administrative decisions are not, there's no precedent set with administrative decisions, particularly in the land use context, because every plan that comes before you is different, because every piece of land is different. So you're not necessarily setting precedents such as a case law. A case would set precedents. Human nature, yes, I think precedents would be set. But from a legal standpoint, it's not.
Yeah, so even if more likely to are not bound to buy, right?
Exactly.
So you're saying there's pretty much nothing we can do about this, though? Like, if we feel like our board was unfairly treated, or our decision or whatever there's nothing we can do about it?
As a board.
Right.
Yeah, as a board.
Because you disagreed too that we should have stuck by the bylaw, but it's already done. She's agreeing. I agree we should have stuck by the bylaw. I don't know what your thought on it is, but I mean, we have the bylaws for a reason. So if we're all agreeing that what just happened wasn't, I'm not putting words in your mouth, I'm just saying, I heard, we're saying that we have these for a reason and it's checks and balances, and obviously we have an attorney here saying, yeah, we probably shouldn't have done it that way. There's nothing we can do about it anyways. The zoning board had to say.
So the one thing about this case that cannot be forgot is the verbiage on this particular case is very difficult to interpret, and no one has done a good job.
Right.
This has been through land court. This has seen a lot of attorneys, judges.
Which I haven't read all that. I'm just going off of listening to you guys.
Well, I'm just saying, yeah. So it's tough. There's no way that you could read it and say like, oh, that makes perfect sense because it contradicts itself. We feel very strongly that we've been doing our best to get through it and deal with the application. We never had an application like that. Once we really dug into it and started reading more and more, we found that our verbiage is not good. So that whole idea that we have to stick to the words only works if the words are correct. So they're not clear. So we didn't disregard them, and we didn't just forget about them. We tried to figure out what the intent was and whether or not it fit to the plan. And like, of course, anytime you got that type of decision, there's going to be people who like disagree. You know what I mean? We would kind of.
I guess I just get stuck on that. So we should have had all of our approval here. We didn't, and the attorney said she didn't agree, but zoning board. So those two.
No, we approved
things.
what was in front of us. We went through the steps, and
It needed a unanimous decision.
So it's been approved by everyone.
It did, that's what she stated.
Yeah,
That's
we
what
didn't
this
have
bylaw
unanimous.
is
That's what she
stating.
just said.
A unanimous from what
But
sense?
it
though? I
never
don't know
got
what
to you. So
Meaning
you're
that all of
assuming
us
it would
had to
get to
vote
you.
favorably.
And unfortunately,
To allow
it's the
it to
zoning
move
board's
forward.
decision.
But
Under
originally,
that
when
section
we
of the
agreed on it, it
bylaw,
wasn't
if they
unanimous
were to
either.
consider the
Right?
application under
But
that
that's
section of the
completely
bylaw.
different. The only thing that you would
But
ever have
it
been
is
looking
that,
at under
because she
22 is
said
whether the
that
change
it
was
needs to be
substantial
that.
or not.
She's the one who brought
Which
it
did
to
any of
zoning.
us see the
That's
change
what-
before?
And
We
they-
didn't have a
No,
say
we
in
didn't.
that
Hold on,
either.
just before we kill the camera
Today.
guy, we
Yeah.
gotta like
Yeah.
cut to one conversation.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's fine.
So is your point that you're trying to make is that we should have been presented the request to vote on allowing it to proceed? I don't know that that would have mattered because the applicant still would have submitted it and the zoning board still would have acted on it the way it was submitted.
What I'm saying is following 16722, and I found out unexpectedly when I showed up at a zoning board meeting that she thought that, and she had put it forward to zoning,
Yep.
that needed to have happened for them to be receiving that in front of them. And then she again said it on the 20th to them that needed to be followed.
And it did not happen. I don't know that we can force an applicant to make a submission for our consideration, nor do I think they would at this point.
And I do think it's important to note that the only thing under section 22 and 48 section 16, the only thing this board would have been voting on is whether the change was substantial. So whatever they presented to the zoning board and got a 3-2 vote, you would take that plan, you would take the plan that they filed with the zoning board the second time, and this board can only determine if the change is substantial or not. This board could not have said internal drives aren't in the bylaw, frontage doesn't matter, or frontage does matter, or you need 10 acres or you don't need 10 acres. None of that could have been discussed. The only thing that is discussed is you are, under the repetitive petition, the planning board is a gatekeeper to say enough is enough, your plan is not substantially different, this is repetitive. Or, we think this plan is substantially different, it's not repetitive. But you do not have the ability to weigh in on the merits of that plan or that application.
If we thought the plan was changed enough, they would have to start the process over again and submit.
Your role is only if the changes are substantial. Your role, you would not have been looking at the merits, which doesn't make, you already looked at the merits in front of the planning board and it was the exact same plan. So you would only be looking, you would be doing a comparison, and that's what you would do in any 48 section 16 or your bylaw section 22 issue. You would only be looking at whether these changes were significant or not.
And if the changes were significant, just to clarify the process, it would not be a modification but a new application. We're just determining whether or not it's a modification versus a new application.
So no, you're determining, so if someone comes in, if someone files a special permit with the zoning board of appeals, so someone comes in for a variance for the zoning board of appeals because their side setback, their building goes into the side setback.
Yep.
They then get denied at the zoning board of appeals. 2 months later, they revise their plan by cutting off a corner of their addition. They come to you and they say, this is a substantial change. I've applied to the zoning board, but I have to come to you first to get permission to go before them because this is a substantial change. You would then say, wait a second, you had 16 square feet in the setback last time and now you have 14 square feet in the setback.
Yep.
That's when you determine, is that substantial or not? If, for example, they came back and before they were 6 feet into the setback and now they're only 2 inches into the setback, you could then maybe say that is a substantial change. So you're only looking at the change and then you're sending them back. My position is that filing a brand new special permit or variance or filing a modification to a special permit or a variance is the same, and therefore they both trigger 16 and 22. The zoning board of appeals, speaking for them from my observing them, their position I think was that never even kicked in because they have the power to modify a special permit that they issued.
And then the process being that if we were to decide that it was not substantially different than the previous application, then they would not be allowed to act on it.
For 2 years.
For 2 years. But regardless, the zoning board determined that they didn't make a determination, but they didn't get to the point of considering that part of the application because they viewed modifications as a whole as not relevant or not applicable to that section of the
Correct.
bylaw.
You've got it correct, in my opinion.
So because it's a modification instead of a new application, it wouldn't have come to us anyway.
But it did come through us.
For
and-
site plan.
Correct.
And
As a separate app, two
Yeah.
totally different things.
Yeah.
Same project, two totally different actions.
But she's saying 16722 applies.
Yeah, I think we've established it.
She's also saying there's nothing we can do about it.
And this isn't the first time a board has not agreed with my advice. There's not much I can do about it either.
Okay. Is there anybody from the audience that would like to speak on this item? Any further discussion from the board?
Nope.
Okay. Anything else, Amy? Good?
I don't know why we have laws if we don't follow them. That doesn't make sense.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
Thank you for
time.
having me.
Thanks, Ann.
So, how much time you got left?
It doesn't matter. We let the record reflect that Gordon Andrews attended at 7:55.
I already did.
Okay, just, I know that the surveyor had left, we never actually approved.
There was nothing to do, and he
Okay.
said that was just for reference. Here's a
Okay.
file, consolidating lots, it's already been recorded.
There's nothing we can do about it, sorry.
Are we back to Franklin? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, just wanted to make sure, because we took no actual action.
Yeah, I had it set aside. Yeah.
Yeah, me too, I wasn't sure. So, because
So Gordon, just for reference on that one, when they were consolidating the lots on the solar farm, they were doing it because the actual plan that got approved had two separate lots, and they would have needed to get access through an easement to that first lot, which didn't meet the frontage requirements. So they purchased that other lot, consolidated them now, so the whole solar farm is on one piece of property, and they have the frontage that was on the approved plans.
Okay.
There's no single-family home or anything else proposed at this point. If they did,
No, there was a question about that plan. Is that?
yeah, I think it was resolved. I think just the lot line that was shown was the former line that would be eliminated with the consolidation.
Right.
We also talked about the fact that if a single-family home was asked to be built there, it would have to remain with the solar field as an all-inclusive.
But they would have to come back and get permitting and do that all over, so.
And that's a whole different bailiwick because then you've got a commercial use on there, you've got residential use, so I think that's got some issues with it too.
Right.
So we're on the open meeting law discussion item at this point.
Oh, I wrote my notes on the solar thing on that one.
Did you get
Oops.
something from Larry Mayo on that?
Yes, we did. It's in the packet.
No.
Didn't Charlie say he didn't do this complaint?
No, when he made a clarification on the type of complaint. She said it was an ethics complaint, and he said it was an open meeting law.
I thought it was one and the same, that's why I thought that.
Yeah, it's. But I think
Yeah.
yeah.
And it was completely like, everybody else on the board always was sending different ideas back and forth on bylaws and things like that, so I had no idea that I couldn't send an email to everybody because I'd been watching it.
I think not only is there clearly like no intent, there was no discussion about anything that was sensitive material or anything. Like there was no.
It seemed like she was asking about
yeah,
stuff that was on previous meetings that anybody could go back and watch, right?
It's one of those things, yeah, where I guess technically it meets the definition, but it's not what people think when you think of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
When you think of two people talking outside, you'd think it would be like the juicy stuff, and that's like not what it was.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to do that at all.
That's what I mean. There was no like.
That's why I just don't want to get on there anymore, because I'm just like, all right, well, here's the meeting.
Yeah, because there's certain stuff that we
I'll
shouldn't
see the
discuss,
agenda.
and that's not what it was.
I mean, gosh, the beautification committee decides things back and forth and their emails all the time. I won't touch it.
I think that
Yeah,
might be a
so-
committee versus a board, though, right? Is there a distinction?
No,
But like,
Yeah.
like on this, as far as I'm concerned, there's no. I mean, I think we all agree it's not going to happen. Now everyone's aware of the situation, and everyone tries away from any of that behavior anyway. The only thing, like it sounds like we can just say, "Hey, we presume it was unintentional." And like I don't see it like that they would impose anything. Like it says that they have the ability to, but like I'm not really looking to impose anything. And I would also assume that the Attorney General wouldn't in this particular thing with the details. You know what I mean? So like if we have to fill out a form or something.
We have to respond, right? We haven't
Yeah.
responded yet.
Yeah,
That's
and I
usually-
don't know if that needs to be formal letter, I presume,
Yes, it does. A letter.
just from the chairman, or how does it have to come from?
For the zoning board, so. A letter from the board, the chairman, yeah.
Okay, so we don't need to sign it all as a board or anything like that, or?
Where?
I think for the zoning board, I can double check, but I think it was just signed by the chairman.
On the open email thing. So like it was, like he's the one who did the thing, but because it was on the open thing, it was like everybody would know about it. I'm not sure.
I think the problem was that there was, as Gordon answered the question, or answered one part of the question. If Amy had asked the question and
all.
yeah, and nobody had responded, I think that on its own might have been okay. But because there was a response to a part of the question, that's what triggered the theoretical violation, unintentional violation.
Because
Yeah,
I
but I know
responded
as far as
to all.
nitpicking.
All,
It's
Yeah, I could've
confusing
responded
because
just to
we're not
Amy.
supposed talk unless we're at this table.
I
But that doesn't
believe
make sense
so.
because we just told her she had to
Well,
come
because
to
I
us before going
responded
to
to
an attorney,
all.
but would that
And
violate
that
the
constitutes a
open meeting?
quorum.
Yeah,
and
so
the
I'm still not
discussion.
sure because it sounds
While
like
the
it's just
quorum was
2 and I
going on.
thought
It's an
3.
interesting point,
Like
but I
I
don't know
think
if
2 of us can talk
you respond
anytime.
just to her if that
That's
then
true.
becomes
You
okay.
have, if you have
Well,
3, you
two
become.
people
Seems
could-
like
Yeah,
it,
so the
right?
fact that they, like, only you
You
two
and I
got
could meet
brought
on
up
the
because
street
only
and
you
talk
two
about
talked,
something,
but
and
Yeah.
that's not,
All of
like
us were
meeting.
there.
yeah,
It's really
yeah,
confusing.
it's strange, and I,
Yeah,
like I
so
said,
it's
I don't
the
know what
file.
Like, the only reason
File,
I
I
can
guess.
see that the thing
Yes.
could have
Yeah.
brought up is that it was like on the public thing, because like how would you have a see that?
well, I
But
think
I
the
don't
other
do
thing
the-
is, you know, we all should go and attend, training for open meeting law.
Or we could say that we've been made aware of what the rules are.
Yeah,
I would take
could
it under
take
recommendation
open meeting
to
law
attend.
on, in October in Hanover.
Like a sample from the
Thanks.
zoning board to the attorney general.
Yeah, so maybe we can just agree to send a letter that we believe there was a completely unintentional violation that we have addressed and have received word from the two from Amy and Gordon that it will not happen again. I think we're all confident that it will not, and that we can just say that we'll all try to attend one of the meetings.
Yeah. I mean,
Have fun.
what I'm doing is not responding to any of the emails.
Yeah, I think we've all
I
taken
think
that.
nobody's responding to any emails, right?
Thought
Now,
safer.
probably our preferred communication would be a phone call, a message. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Make it a little easier.
Yep. So I would be of the opinion that I don't think it rises to the occasion of needing to go to formal training for everybody, mandating formal training for any one or individual person or group.
Yeah, I agree.
Aware of what happened, why it was deemed a violation. The sample letter? Yeah. And I promise not to do it again.
So we just need to send a letter to the Attorney General.
Yep.
Do you want me to draft something and send, I know you guys do emails, so how do you want me to do that?
Maybe just bring it to our next meeting on the.
Well, we need
We're
to
gonna
get it
have
out
to respond
soon.
before
That
then.
long, no? I mean, it's up to you, but.
You can distribute, you can send us an email, a copy of the letter, and we can each individually respond back to you with our comments.
Yes.
Right? And then you can figure out what the most appropriate one is. And send
It might
a,
get confusing because none of you will know what the other said, but,
That's all right. If you get 1 or 2, just send it.
okay.
and if you don't get
How about if
comments-
nobody responds, you should just send it, because then we all agree.
Well, Gordon's gonna have to review it and sign it, so at a minimum, Gordon will be the end quality control.
Okay.
So what will it be, like next Tuesday, Alana, that it'll be done, or what do you think?
So I have a zoning board on Monday night, so yeah, Tuesday, possibly Wednesday latest. That's all right, but I'm sure
Yeah.
Tuesday I can draft something quick, because I mean, it's relatively simple.
And it's within our time period as well?
No, we blew the time period. The
Alright.
violation happened a long time ago.
It says like within 14 days or something, you have to respond. I thought I read.
That's what I read too.
Yep. So we are well beyond the 14 days.
They might push us to do the training because they're gonna think that we just didn't respond to them.
I didn't know that we needed to respond, to be perfectly honest, within 14 days. Or at all. So it's a different matter. I don't think they.
Yeah, I didn't
That
think that we
training
had, were under
necessarily.
any deadline. I don't remember that.
Should Charlie have told us that?
He's usually pretty good at that stuff.
He did the complaint, so maybe he couldn't. Maybe it's against some kind of law.
I can't talk
What
to you
was
guys
that?
about it. There's 3 of you.
Right. I said, shouldn't Charlie have told us? And then I said, well, maybe not, because he did the complaint. Maybe that's against some kind of law or, yeah, I don't know.
So
He
draft
talked
up a
about it
letter.
to us
Do you
before.
want to do that in the form
Uh-huh.
of a motion or?
Do we need to take a motion on something like that?
Yeah, we could take a motion.
I'll make a motion just to have like official its own thing. Make a motion to send a letter to the Attorney General in regards to the violation of the open meeting law. And the board has found that there was an unintentional violation. The board has spoke with all members. We've addressed the issue and believe we've come up with a solution to prevent it from happening in the future. And that would be it.
Is there a motion, is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion's unanimous. Okay.
So you'll send that out on Tuesday. We'll take a look at it. We'll get your comments back. Maybe give everybody a time period by which to respond by the end of the week, and pending no comments, Gordon can sign.
Okay.
Next, the 40B. I don't know that anybody's had a chance to review the application yet. I know I haven't.
I
That's this
started
thing?
to, but
Yeah.
I don't-
obviously it's a little
Yeah.
large.
I don't know that it's necessarily good use of our time to pour through it while we're here tonight.
I might need some time preemptively to
I'm pretty
attack
fast
this.
reader,
I
but not that
definitely
quick.
need some time to go over it.
So I guess the question, right, on March 18th, there's gonna be the first hearing for the zoning board.
Yes.
And our meeting's the day after.
It's a Wednesday, I won't be able to make that.
We'll probably have all sorts of people there that night.
It's a Wednesday?
I'll go.
It's the zoning board hearing.
Oh, I thought zoning was on Monday. Maybe.
If it gets state approval, it passes right over us.
March 18th is a Wednesday.
There is a chance that we'll have a meeting and we can make suggestions.
That's what I thought I saw
when they
downstairs.
come in,
I
we
think
might
so
be able to
too.
say,
Is it a special meeting because
we
of the
like
interest,
these in our
maybe?
town.
Well, because they have a 40
It
day.
might be nice and be like, oh yeah, we'll plant some bushes. That's what I'd expect, if you know what I mean.
Oh, okay,
Like I
so
wouldn't expect much more.
it's not
venting.
marked on the calendar, that's why. Okay.
I'll do up some questions to send in.
So on these in the past, have they held joint meetings? I know the planning board is not officially a party to the decision-making process. Are we there as a,
Typically in the past, we've held joint meetings.
So are we gonna put in for a meeting on that night so that if there's 3 of us there, we have the right to talk?
Yeah, and we need to post
Should we talk
on,
before?
I'm
for the,
sorry.
we need to
If you'd
post,
like to attend?
we need to post for the 18th.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to show up, that would be good.
I'll definitely be there.
I have a previous engagement already on that night, so
Amy,
I know that
can you
I'll be
go?
able to attend the first one.
So if you go with me and Amy will agree because they can't go,
Okay.
but you have to go.
So with that, and
I'll pick
also,
you
so the process is.
I'm really good at
zoning board
showing up at
party
those
that
things.
You haven't
engages
seen it one
peer
yet,
review.
so I am.
Yeah,
They have an account like
Show
we
up at
do
all
for
these
that.
though.
yeah, they have Alana, they have a revolving account for
Plenty.
review too, don't they?
Yes.
Okay. So at that point, I presume with the initial presentation,
I
they
would,
make a
I would say the
determination.
18th, they're gonna do the initial
Right.
presentation and
The zoning board will engage peer review. At that point, release them. They'll start their review.
and we can
Off
take
to
a
the
look at
races.
it.
Yep.
And, come
Oh,
up
so you were
with
saying we really don't
comments.
have a say in this, right? Or we do?
So-
We serve in an advisory role, so the comprehensive permits go in front of the zoning board of appeals. So that's why they call it a comprehensive permit. It doesn't need planning board and zoning board approvals individually. The zoning board is kind of the end clearinghouse for all permitting other than conservation. They still have to go in front of Conservation Commission and get any sort of wetland permits that the project would be subject to. So they would put it to us, and I think we provide our opinion as a board as to, you know, whether or not it's a good
That
design.
won't be the 17th or 18th.
No, I don't think so. I
We
think
won't have an opinion by then.
I think you can have an opinion on the fly necessarily, but if they're looking for a written opinion as
Right.
to whether or not it conforms to site plan review requirements or anything like that, I don't think we would do that until later on in the process.
No, you guys all get your own, for sure.
So should we put this back on the agenda for the meeting the day after so that we can discuss who,
Yeah, I
like
think
who goes?
it will be, right? As a discussion item as opposed to a formal agenda, like an open hearing item. Yeah.
The 17th that week is the meeting about the bylaw change.
I'm gonna be busy. I have
Tuesday,
so many
Wednesday,
meetings.
Thursday.
Which is the 17th,
The 17th is the bylaw change meeting.
17th, 18th, 19th.
Yep. St. Patrick's Day.
17th.
Bring it beer.
Mm-hmm. I think you can bring that into a town building, right?
Work on that.
Do we need Charlie for the correspondence? Charlie has set date for planning board to hold public hearing on proposed bylaw changes. No, I'm sorry. Let's do that double.
Alright, that must be about this.
Oh yeah, I think I have that.
So we'll be looking at scheduling the public hearing on proposed zoning bylaw amendments. We have a regularly scheduled meeting on the 16th, I think fits the bill, right?
The
When?
9th.
Wouldn't it be the 19th?
The 19th, yeah, March 19th.
No, the next month, April 16th. It's not we can do it on the 19th? I'm sorry, I was confused by this.
Oh, you're
May
right,
not
so
be
it's not
feasible given newspaper deadlines.
Yeah, March 19th might not be feasible.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so April 16th looks like the first feasible, and it gives enough leeway to town meeting. I think that looks good. Anybody else?
April 2nd doesn't work, or?
May not be.
See, it may not be feasible. So like instead of trying and
Okay.
right? Sure. But it's the same, we already have a regular scheduled meeting, so it's not like we wouldn't be meeting.
Yep.
Yeah. Is that, April vacation for anyone? Oh no, it's the next week, right?
Which is April vacation?
I think it's the 19th through the
No,
25th.
Amy's correct, because Patriots Day is the third Monday in April every year, and that's the 20th.
Okay, so
So
that
you-
is
so
the
you
school
were-
vacation?
So the week of the 19th is the school vacation.
Yeah, because the 25th is cleanup day too, so we'll see you guys off of that too, right?
Meetings and cleaning? On this.
Just pick up a couple pieces.
I'm sure we all can find enough fun at Bonners if necessary. Was it that photograph of the person on Elm Street earlier today?
Yeah. awful.
I didn't see that yet.
He had them all lined up on a table, just hundreds, you know,
Clearly,
individual.
that's somebody who lives near him that has a drinking problem, is my thought.
Randy,
Oh, yeah.
Randy, was it?
I used to serve every once in a while, you walk by and you just see like one kind for like 75 feet on the side, and you're like, wow, somebody gets the same spot every
Every
day.
time
and-
before they hit their house driveway. Yeah.
I used to watch it when I'd walk 36. I could see people hucking things from on. I was just like, oh my god.
Do we have a copy of what the proposed zoning bylaw changes are?
Yeah.
You,
It got emailed to us.
Not yet.
yeah, not yet. The only one that actually has come in that we know is gonna be on the warrant is the marijuana in the commercial district.
Petition.
Right. I don't know what may come in before the 24th, the special town meeting. So I don't know if we're gonna do a multifamily bylaw or not. I don't know if there's gonna be any other things on there.
We have a special town meeting on this 24th of March.
No, the special town meeting will be on the 11th, same night as the annual.
alright.
But the board has a deadline of March 24th for submitting the articles for the special.
Alright.
Which board is this, zoning
I was like,
No, select.
Yeah, okay.
So, the select, you know, we'll see what articles come in, whether, and you all may submit articles for that matter.
So you back up a minute?
Yeah.
There's a special town meeting for March?
No,
May.
May 11th.
Oh,
As usual, we always on the,
Yeah.
okay, there.
Should we put it in here?
The March and May thing was getting mixed up.
so the deadline for submission is March 24th, so it meets the special town meeting, is what he's saying.
Okay.
Deadline.
And the one that got submitted for the marijuana, was that submitted by the selectmen or?
There's a petition article by residents.
Okay.
So our.
And that's okay because it got passed over, right?
We might have the meeting in enough time, but we have to wait for advertisements, so we can't have it too quick.
But if we don't submit anything by March 24th, we're not submitting anything. We only have one meeting before that.
Yeah.
So do you want to do it on the 16th?
Yeah, that's the closest one, gives us the most
16th.
amount of time.
April 16th for a hearing for the,
That still gives us time to discuss it afterwards.
yeah. So, do we need to motion that or anything, or are we just gonna ask, for that hearing to be scheduled for April 16th? Do we need to, motion that we'll have a hearing to hear any bylaw changes on the 16th?
Just put it on
And the
agenda.
deadline's the 24th?
We can take a motion to put the hearing on, because we're gonna have to do notice for that.
All right, would we do it, would we give time, do it first, or wait, do it 7:30? I'll make a motion. I just don't know
We
what-
can just set a time and then it's there. We get other appointments coming in, we'll work around it.
Make a motion to set a public hearing on April 16th at 7 o'clock for the discussion
do it
of,
like 7:15 and then that way it'll give us time.
yeah,
Get something
7:15
short that's coming up.
for the proposed zoning bylaw amendments.
Okay, I have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Carlos?
Yeah, if you wanna add it.
I was gonna add in to let people know that the deadline to get bylaws in will be the 24th for review for the hearing. Right?
I think we can do that when they're here, but I don't know if we necessarily wanna write that into like the description on
motion.
the thing.
Okay.
If you know what I mean.
Alright.
But like, we should definitely make people know, cause we're like tight.
Okay,
Cool.
cool. All right, so go ahead, second, Carlos.
Sure, second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimous.
So why do we have to take a formal motion on that? Because it's a zoning, we don't, okay.
Yeah, just to make sure that it's
Taken
heard.
care of.
Okay.
I guess
I'm always confused as to when we take motions and when we don't.
Me too.
Yeah, me too.
So we might as well just do it.
We like
Be
motion.
clear, right?
I know, my favorite one is,
We're not there yet.
Oh, we're not ready.
It's always in order, but we can always put it out. We don't have to act on it yet.
Make an open motion to adjourn. Okay.
Sorry.
Don't be.
Shut down.
I
tried.
figured somebody was gonna say it.
What are we doing?
We're out there now, right?
Minutes. Seemed like we had a bunch.
There's 3 of them. No, 4 of them. Wow.
We heard anything from Pastor Lane again?
Yeah, right, the deadline for them to respond passed. What's the next step?
Should we put it on our agenda for the next meeting? I don't know if it's on
Are
here.
we carrying it over?
Looking. I do not see it.
We should have it on there.
Is that you typing what we're saying over there? Thank you.
We should probably reach out to Larry Mayo again.
So you'd like to add me to add Pastor Lane to the next meeting?
Please.
Okay.
Is everybody on December 19th or what are we on?
Yep, that's what I was reading.
I see where it says she's fine with 2 nights a month. Oh, well, looking to do more than that in March, aren't we?
Only committed to 2. Wise move.
The camera still recording? You've got an infinite battery life there?
I plugged it in, remember?
Oh, you did? Okay.
I was hoping we'd have to end it early. I mean, I was hoping we didn't have to end it early.
We've got another 12 hours on the calendar.
Did we vote on December 19th, or can we just do them all at the end, or?
We could do that. Everybody's good with December 19th? I'm open for motion.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from December 19th, 2019 as written.
A motion, is there a second?
I'm sorry.
I'll
December
second.
19th, personal.
Oh,
You good with those?
yeah, I'll second that.
So it's motion and seconded.
Mm-hmm.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Passes unanimous.
Move on to January 2nd.
Sure.
Motion to accept the meeting minutes from January 2nd, 2020.
Have a motion to approve the minutes for January 2nd. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You voted? Okay. Passes.
I'm almost done with the 16th.
I got the paper clip, so that one's gonna be
Okay.
2.
You've already done.
How's everybody on the 16th? Motion to accept the minutes of January 16th, 2020.
Have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It was all 4 in favor.
So for some reason, I forgot to put February's on the agenda. I
Oh,
don't know
so we'll
why.
wait on that one.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I just wanted to,
Thanks, Alana.
Sure.
What did we do?
Is this all of them?
We did January 2nd.
And
And
there's
we
the
did
second.
January 16th.
Oh, thank you.
What's today?
Today is the 5th. Alana,
Yeah.
at the next meeting, can we see if we can find 241 Franklin's and original?
I have that written as a note, yep,
I figured. but-
yeah.
They're free around here. Bunch of them. That's got 2 paper clips on it.
These paper clips. I always line up the paper clip here.
Free, I got bunches.
And February 6th, you said you didn't have on?
It's there, but I just forgot to list it on the agenda. I don't know, is that, can you just do it anyway, I don't know. Charlie, can you
what,
I just forgot
Minutes.
to list the date of the meeting minutes that were done on.
yeah,
Can
They
they
do-
still vote on them?
on the minutes that they weren't on the list.
Yeah.
Not really, no.
No. Okay.
One of those.
I do not.
Yes, stop.
Okay, so that leaves us with one more to do another time.
Yep.
So, I'm waiting.
All right, I'll motion to adjourn.
I will second.
So a second,
Yes, there is. Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.